Here lies the proof that if you beg for something long enough, you will get it. For 3 years, you've been asking us for Steins Gate, and well, Papa Stork is here to deliver. You see, there's anime I like, ones I find fascinating, and then there's series like Steins Gate. You know what it's like to touch something that's held in such high esteem by so many people? And sexy, yeah. No, it's stressful. Now, we have a good audience, okay, but weebs as a whole, not so great. When you spend your entire life wishing you were a cartoon, you tend to take things a little too seriously, and if anyone, especially some stupid YouTuber who doesn't have a real job and doesn't deserve attention because their hacks are only held up by simps, says something a deep weeb doesn't agree with, well, hell may hath no fury like a woman scorned, but the internet hath no fury like a triggered weeb, let me tell you from experience. So naturally, I tread forth with full confidence and satisfaction, rhino balls in one hand and a Mountain Dew in the other, ready to talk about Steins Gate. Also, I want to preface this with a statement, okay? I really like Steins Gate. I am here to celebrate that, so chill your hacker fingers, all right? In the spirit of the show, we're here to have fun and also get a little real. We're going to talk about a super smart dude with no social skills and a mad scientist alter ego who hops through various world timelines to keep his new friends safe from his undeserved confidence, okay? Throughout the first handful of episodes, you're really unsure whether or not Okabe Rintaro is actually a genius or just lost all of his marbles, and his friends are simply appeasing him. He is constantly talking on his phone with no one on the other end, going off about the organization. He's the type of guy that you just assume believes the moon landing is a hoax, you know, because he's smarter than you. But then Steins Gate evolves from witty banter and sarcasm to dealing with the consequences of choice on increasingly extreme levels. The show suddenly goes, your choices have consequences. Now watch your friends die. The plot isn't about shooting text through the space-time continuum to see if your past self can win the lottery. It's about how selfishly trying to cheat at the lottery can maybe destroy the entire world. Dealing with the velocity of the dominoes as they begin to fall, the increasing pile of trauma and self-hatred generated by causing the equivalent of a 1 billion car pileup because you are texting and driving. It's about struggling through the pain of your actions when there is no right choice to make. Steins Gate is not an easy watch. It's the harsh reality that our choices matter, and because of our self-centered worldview, we often pick the wrong ones, or that sometimes no matter what we choose, we simply can't stop something horrible from happening. It's the story of one questionably brilliant man, whose entire world shatters to pieces, and his struggle to blindly glue it back together without, again, losing all of his marbles. This is Steins Gate. Let's get into it. Hey guys, Mike here. I'm going to try to be real quick, so I'd appreciate it if you gave me like 30 seconds before we get into the video. Tyler and I are working to bring you more content this year. I know that we waited a while on Rumiko Takahashi. Sometimes that kind of stuff happens. Right now, we got a bunch of stuff in the work. Our hope is 3 videos a month. Those videos being 20 to 45 minutes long, maybe even longer. We want to bring you guys the best content that we can, but we can't do it alone. So if you enjoy the channel and have the means, please consider joining the Patreon. The money goes directly into editors' pockets and makes it possible for us to do more of what we do more often. And when I say it goes into the pockets of editors, I mean we're paying them the right way, the way they deserve to be paid, which, believe it or not, is not a common thing on this platform. Plus, as a member, you get to join an amazing community, hang out with us, make friends, check out our awesome events like our Bad Dub viewing parties. It is definitely worth the entry, and you'll be supporting us, bringing you more content in the process, and independent workers, as well as artists. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your time. Now, Steins Gate. Okay, Okabe Rintaro, alias Halloween Kyoma, aka Future Gadgetry Labs member 001. Is a pretty smart guy. Smart enough to totally embarrass a visiting doctor who shamelessly plagiarized his time machine theories from the decade-old forum rantings of a mysterious John Titor. And that's how we're introduced to the main protagonist. He goes completely over the top with accusations without any regard for tact, protocol. It's both cringy and bold, which kind of sums up Okabe's personality at the start of the show pretty succinctly. But mid-rant, he's pulled away by a redhead, Makise Kurisu. Kurisu tries to get Okabe to talk to her about whatever he was trying to tell her 15 minutes ago, only Okabe has never met her before. Or has he? I mean, we're talking episode 1 here, and in the first 10 minutes, Okabe's entire mental state has already been called into question. Is this guy sane? Is he hallucinating? Does he have dissociative identity disorder? What is going on? Because he is definitely not normal. Is he some kind of genius savant or certifiably insane? It's a brilliant setup to the plot because not 10 minutes in, the audience is already questioning whether the main character is a reliable narrator. Did he actually talk to this woman 15 minutes ago? Did his alternate personality talk to her and he doesn't remember it? Or perhaps he did talk to her but traveled through time. They are at a time travel lecture after all. It's not clear what the true story is. He runs away from Kurisu, literally laughing maniacally. I mean, listen to this.
Wait,
That is indeed maniacal laughter. Then suddenly a video message is sent to his phone and it's just static. The mystery of the phone message is cut short by a man screaming in pain on a higher floor, and upon investigating, Okabe finds Kurisu in a pool of blood. Once outside, Okabe messages his friend Daru, "I think someone just stabbed Makise Kurisu." And as soon as he presses send, the entire world warps around him. He's still in the exact same spot as before, but the streets are empty, and there's Mayuri, the friend who attended the lecture with him, just holding out a drink for Okabe. She doesn't notice anything wrong, and Okabe sounds more insane by the second. At this point, I wasn't really sure what to believe, right? The story is told from Okabe's viewpoint, but his outright weirdness followed by the very strange events that only he remembers immediately made me skeptical of his perspective. And to be honest, this is something that kind of followed me all the way through the show and still does to this day. One more thing made me doubt him even more, and I'm curious how many other people noticed it on their first watch through. Let's rewind a bit here to where Okabe and Mayuri hear a scream followed by Okabe finding Kurisu's body. Did anything feel off about this to you? Or more off than someone getting, randomly murdered? How about the fact that the scream was a man's, yet it's a woman that is lying in a pile of blood? In the words of Zoomers everywhere, that's Seuss. Couple all these things together, and there's one of two options. Either Okabe is actually batshit insane, or we're not getting the full picture. Now, the case for Okabe's sanity isn't helped by his one-sided discussion with a static George Washington alpaca. Honestly, I don't know what that thing is. Here's my interpretation though. But throughout the day, Okabe's memories differ from his friends around him. Daru, the friend he texted, isn't even fazed by his lack of memory or discussions from earlier in the day. In fact, his friends think he's acting completely normal for him. Again, not a great sign that Okabe has everything, together. But then these three turn a banana into something sold on baddragon.com. Please sponsor us, using a microwave with a cell phone taped to it, right? So suddenly the plot, as Okabe tells it, could be 100% feasible because a microwave just turned bananas into jello. If that happens, then all the other weird stuff is on the table too. And not just in Okabe's mind. It's a continuous back and forth between whether or not any of this is serious or actually happening, and it's all meant to give the audience an air of uncertainty. It's like when someone deadpans a joke to you, you can't quite tell if they're serious or just yanking your chain. That's exactly how episode 1 feels. You are being gaslit by the story, and it's a perfect emotional state to be in because Okabe is emotionally there too. He's questioning himself and what he's seeing, unsure of what happened or what is real, and having this same emotional process parallel the audience's creates an immediate connection with Okabe that will last through the rest of the show. If you're being gaslit in your romantic relationship, you should probably talk to a therapist about it, but if you're being gaslit by your TV, that's some good writing. It's only at the very end of episode 1 where Okabe literally steals Daru's phone and realizes that the text he sent about Makise Kurisu dying was sent back in time to a week ago. Concrete evidence that the world has actually changed from what he remembers appears immediately after, with Kurisu herself being alive. Episode 1 not only puts us in the same emotional state of uncertainty as Okabe, but ends the episode with a sense of shock. Shock also felt by Okabe because, again, Kurisu is alive. Somehow, this world has changed. Events have changed, and that text was the catalyst for that change. It also happened to save someone's life. This is a type of opening that perfectly sets up that the setting is our own world, but there's some fishy shit going on, and none of it really makes any sense just yet. We'll get into it. But first, let's take a little bit of a look at Okabe, right? Here we have a grown man with what seems like a brilliant mind. However, he's not exactly, famous or accomplished. From what we know, he's just attending lectures like this to troll people. In fact, he really has nothing going for him at all. He lives in a ratty apartment, and for all intents and purposes, he's a complete nobody. He's pretty isolated within himself and has only a very small social bubble to which he rarely reveals his true persona. The mad scientist he plays is a personification of his arguable delusions of grandeur. The reason I say arguable is because the guy created a time machine, right? Now, whether that was genius or dumb luck is debatable, but regardless, he did it, and that does warrant a certain level of recognition, I think. Despite this, his outward attitude about himself and his abilities reflects a societal shift that's taken place over the last 20 years. One I don't have a very firm opinion on. Gasp, I know. But I would say it can be surmised as the participation trophy effect. The idea that just by showing up, you deserve a reward. Now, I don't know if that's right or wrong, but what I do know is that the professional world definitely doesn't work like that. And if that is training for the professional world, we should probably instead teach our kids to lie, cheat, and steal while stepping on the necks of anyone who gets in their way, because that's how you actually get anywhere in psychopathic America, but I digress. Okabe is the epitome of undeserved confidence. He wants to be big, bold, and brash, to be even smarter than he is, to be the anime genius that only exists in fiction and maybe the now believed to be defunct SS. But he's not. Regardless of his intellect, which is only one part of intelligence, he is extremely insecure, self-conscious, and socially inept. The reason Steins Gate's tragedy hits as hard as it does is because Okabe is relatable, likely more so to those within otaku culture, but also to a much wider audience. We all have a public and private persona, which allows us to get by in society. Some of us are better at incorporating the two into a blend, but others feel the need to mask much harder, to cover their self-consciousness, ineptitude, and insecurity with things like bragging, over-exaggeration, and chest puffing. That is the mad scientist. The other end of this dissection is the strain of Steins Gate's narrative on the protagonist. Okabe is the only person who retains their memories of previous worlds, timelines, worldlines, whatever you want to call them. The entire series is a test of his confidence and self-assuredness. To suddenly be cast into an entire reality where things you believe to be real no longer exist, or the facts you lived by have changed, would be earth-shattering. To believe that you're not insane in that situation may actually be insane. In episode 1, we have already witnessed things changing. A person who is supposed to be dead is no longer dead. For a normal person, that would maybe shatter your mind, I don't know, but Okabe immediately accepts that he has changed the past. However, as the only one who remembers his original world line, he has gone into complete isolation. An entire dimension has disappeared and been replaced, and now only exists in Okabe's mind and his alone. He holds worlds within himself while existing in others he doesn't belong in, because more than changing the past, he's hopping dimensions. He's a juxtaposition and an anomaly, and this can only cause mental corrosion over time, worsened by the increasing variability of the timelines. So let's talk about the consequences of change. The events of the first episode lead to Okabe and Kurisu perfecting the phone wave, real name TDB, with the ability to send text to the past, which of course are named D-mail, and not the type of D-mail I get from horny gay dudes who love this channel. Please stop. D-mail can alter the present because the person receiving the text in the past often changes their actions from what originally happened due to the information given to them. Their new actions then alter the world line. That one change can affect other choices, thereby changing the entire world as we know it. It is the butterfly effect in motion. You know, the idea that if you kill a butterfly in the past, it could have this crazy effect on the future. The idea that one small change creates much bigger changes through a ripple effect down the road. For instance, let's say I got food poisoning from a Sushirito food truck. Definitely never happened in real life. I could send myself a D-mail not to eat there at 5 p.m. before they close on a really hot day. Because I then decide not to eat there thanks to brilliant future me, I wasn't bent over a toilet puking that night, so I went out instead, happened to meet Daft Punk at a bar, and instead of them breaking up, I became the third member of the band, bringing in a new age of music that changes the face of the world as we know it. I then become world dictator and murder all of you so I can live in peace. That's the basic idea. Small change, big effect. So Okabe and the crew start texting the past, creating increasingly more off-kilter versions of the future. It starts small, but eventually entire cities are completely changing due to one text. And they're not altering the past out of any perceived ill will or selfishness, though I would say that the selfishness of their actions is intrinsic. They're trying to fix problems or help their friends, essentially changing people's lives for the better. The problem is that those changes end up affecting so much more than just the one person they sent the text for, and you'd think if Okabe was so brilliant, he would have seen that coming. Anyway, to make matters worse, Okabe is the only person, again, who can remember what happened before they sent a D-mail. He has a unique ability that he dubs reading Steiner. This allows him to keep all of his memories from multiple timelines, something that must be very confusing and stressful. However, everyone else has their memories overwritten, so the changes make sense. The other way to look at it is their reality is just different from the one that Okabe came from. Again, the question is he changing time, or is he traveling through dimensions? Now, while this ability makes Okabe unique, it also completely isolates him from the rest of the cast. As their D-mails make the world more and more wonky, he ends up bearing the burden of these changes alone, especially when the rest of the plot hits. And we'll mark spoiler territory here on the off chance you haven't seen Steins Gate yet and want to go in blind, but for everybody else, let's continue. Now, the overarching story behind Steins Gate is that the ability to alter the past creates a dystopian future, and of course World War III. CERN, the European Society for Nuclear Research, happens to be creating time machine prototypes in an effort to control the future. They haven't been able to create a working time machine yet, but the phone wave's D-mail abilities get detected by CERN's, like time scanners, whatever. Now, Daru hacks into CERN, but the hack seems to have alerted the conglomerate to their working time microwave, right? So CERN attempts to steal the phone wave to perfect their own system, control the world, typical evil corporation stuff. So Kurisu upgrades the phone wave to allow for someone to send their consciousness back in time up to 2 days. So now there's some headphones taped to the microwave. I recommend not trying that one at home. And basically, the existence of this working phone wave leads inevitably to World War III and the eventual dystopian future that comes with modern science fiction. Working time travel means a horrible future. Now, believe it or not, that plotline is actually kind of the side plot for the bigger issue, because every time CERN attacks to obtain the phone wave, Mayuri dies, and every time she dies, Okabe, in distress, has to jump back 2 days in time to try and stop her death. However, he's unable to, and he watches her die over and over again, getting more and more desperate to save her, and slowly losing his sanity, Subaru better. Now, what Okabe and Kurisu end up realizing is that every time they cancel out the effect of a D-mail, Mayuri's death gets further away. So the hope is that by canceling out all the effects of the D-mails ever sent, they can save Mayuri from dying, the time machine won't be invented, and World War III will be averted for now. And of course, happy endings all around, but the reality of this plan starts to sink in. To save the future, they have to undo every single thing they did for their friends. Things like helping Luca be born a girl instead of a boy, or saving Ferris's father from getting on a flight that's going to inevitably crash. Okabe now has to convince his friends to give up their newfound better and happier lives so he can bring reality back to its original worldline. It's a heartbreaking set of discussions between Okabe and the people he cares about. Imagine asking someone to give up their father for a reality where he's dead, or giving up your female body that feels right and natural for a male body that just feels wrong. He's basically asking his friends to give up pieces of themselves for the quote-unquote greater good of the world. And these aren't perceived as gifts, these things. In these timelines, they're simple facts of reality. It's not like Luca just popped some brand new boobs. She had those from birth here. It's more than giving up their desires, it's giving up their reality, their entire existence as who they are in these dimensions. And I'd say one of the core ideas of the show is that you can't escape the past and live without the consequences of your choices. And working with that idea, Okabe and Kurisu have to give up a lot. Remember, before the first D-mail, Kurisu died, so erasing all D-mails may save Mayuri's life, but in return, it's forcing death on Kurisu. This leaves Okabe in an impossible Sophie's choice scenario. Do you force your best friend since childhood to die, or do you force the person you've fallen in love with to die? And oh yeah, they've fallen for each other. There's love. And I think at this point, it's obvious to say that Steins Gate is an interesting and well-written show. but time travel is arguably one of the most desirable and most dangerous ideas that mankind has ever had. So naturally, it has been incorporated into our entertainment with great success due to that fact. There are so many different ways to make money off time travel, from fun childhood romps like those Treehouse books to horrible childhood trauma movies starring Ashton Kutcher. It can go from fun, whimsical stories of trying desperately not to bang your young hot mom to having a robot from the future come and play incel at the mall. I doubt that there is a single person alive who has not wished that they could go back in time and change something, or to take advantage of their current skills and knowledge in the past, to do something like win the lottery, to invest in Google in the 90s, to jump to 1989 and record all of Blink-182's songs before they even started their band, to travel to Queens in early May 1946 and push Marianne Trump down the stairs, normal stuff. Obviously, it's not currently possible, and when it becomes possible, it will be a weapon that makes any other look like a squeaky hammer, which garners the question whether it will ever actually be achieved or realized, or if it already has and we're just living in some psychopath's mistake. Who knows? Anyway, wishful thinking and existential terror aside, there are two fundamental philosophies tied to the concept of time travel: fatalism and existentialism. The former being the idea that there is a predetermined path which we're all traveling down, and that no matter what, it cannot be changed. Even if you think you're changing it, the universe will rubber band back to course. Think of fatalism as a more devout Christian way of thinking. And then the latter, existentialism, is the idea that choices bring you down your own path, a path which you direct through those choices, which sounds great until you get murdered in an alley and realize you chose to go down the alley at the wrong time and you got yourself killed. Existentialism makes everything your gain and your loss. It's essentially taking responsibility for everything that happens to you. It's also heavily tied into the ideas of the Church of Satan. So, now it's obvious to see how these fundamental schools of thought are enticing to us weak little monkeys, right? One is the idea of a greater power, a plan, a protector, a way to wave off misfortune as that's just the way it was meant to be. The other gives the thinker the ultimate self-fulfilling power to move the world at their whim by making the right choices and avoiding the wrong ones. One is a journey, one is a game. Now, in more thought-provoking time travel science fiction, there are always consequences to using that power. A common exercise is trying to think of a world without Little Mustache Man. By saving over 11 million lives between his rise to power and the end of the war, would the world be a better place, or would the future inevitable conflict be far, far worse? The factors that figure into a global picture are numerous beyond human conception, but it's undeniable that humanity as a whole learned from the experience of World War II. It could have been better, but it could have been worse. Remember, the limit of human catastrophe is the annihilation of our species. We haven't gotten there yet, but would we have if we hadn't learned about the level of evil that modernization can bring? If we hadn't learned how one maniacal man can manipulate a downtrodden people into a lightning-fast and viciously cruel war machine? We don't know, but would you risk that? What if you wouldn't have been born if World War II never happened? What if someone you loved wouldn't have been born? To reel it back in, if your dad leaned a little more to the left when he busted in your mom, you might be a totally different person, or simply not exist at all. That's the fascinating beauty and cruelty of time. The chances, the choices, the variables upon variables that made things exactly the way they are in this moment. But now imagine if someone told you that it wasn't supposed to be this way, that it was wrong, that you were actually supposed to be a dysphoria-riddled person, or that someone you love is supposed to be dead, and because they aren't, police brutality exists in this timeline or something like that. It's endlessly thought-provoking. And to take it straight home, I had a girlfriend once who used me. Right? I think a lot of us have had a partner that's done that. But in this case, she gaslit me into providing her housing, paying off her debt, working 50 hours a week in a cold, dark warehouse. She removed me from my friends, sowed doubt into my mind, and tied me to her trauma, which to this day, I still don't know the reality or factuality of. Over the span of 2 years, she stole more than $30,000 from me and my family members who tried to help me at her request, who believed me when I went to them for help because I had no money despite working more than full time. Meanwhile, while I was gone, she was getting high, cheating, you name it. When the lies finally fell apart and I left, she was dead from an overdose in 4 months. It was only then, through her death, that I truly knew that I wasn't crazy. She was that good. I had no evidence until she died. Only rumors, tips, things that didn't add up, things I didn't want to believe. I chose to stay as long as I did. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't fun, and you bet your ass I wished I could go back in time, cold clock myself and drop me off in a desert town in New Mexico. But given the actual chance, I wouldn't. At least not now. I wouldn't be here now if I hadn't gone through that. I wouldn't have the fiance that I've spent 9 years with, the friends that I love, the perspective that going through something like that can bring. And unfortunately, the truth is, life just really sucks sometimes. Fate or choice, destiny or determinism. But the fantasy always remains, the what ifs, and time travel is nothing if not a giant, amazing series of what ifs. Now what's cool is that there are 2 different endings to Steins Gate, depending on whether you decided to watch 0 or not. Now in the original series, Okabe is able to erase all of the D-mail and also change the world line so drastically by fooling himself in the past that he breaks the 1% divergence barrier. Basically, he was able to create such a drastic change that the world line jumped from the alpha timeline to a different one, a world line dubbed Steins Gate, and specifically one where Kurisu and Mayuri both stay alive and World War III is averted. And I think that's a good way to wrap up the story, where everybody gets to live happily ever after and is only mildly bittersweet, as Kurisu and Okabe have to give up their budding relationship for it since they don't know each other in that new timeline. But where there's life, there's hope, right? However, the alternate ending in Steins Gate 0 is very interesting. In this version, Okabe gives up. He discards his mad scientist persona and Kurisu stays dead. It's a scenario in which the world lines begin changing without Okabe doing anything, and he has to work through vast amounts of trauma and fear to reclaim the person he was at the start of the show. Now, I don't want to go into Steins Gate 0 a ton in this video since it's already getting pretty long, and I gotta leave you with something to complain about, but I do want to point out that the alternative ending is kind of more in line with the themes of being unable to run from the consequences of the past. Another school of thought, if you will, the karmic wheel. Here, Kurisu and Okabe giving up her life to return to the original world line cements that idea that the past cannot be run from and must be faced head on. This case is far more fatalist. Avoiding fate only makes everything worse. The original ending somewhat disregards this idea at the end of the show, and while I was happy with the ending because I wanted Kurisu and Mayuri to live, it also felt good to have scenario B, as we don't have concrete evidence on the real-world repercussions of time travel. Or do we? While the ending of Steins Gate 0 is far more convoluted and confusing, it keeps with the idea that you can't f with the past without suffering the consequences. So I tend to find I'm more accepting of the entirety of Steins Gate and 0 rather than just simply the first series. Choices do have consequences, and sometimes there is no right answer. You simply have to choose between the better of 2 evils, and you may not even know which one is the better of 2 evils. I mean, look at the American presidential elections, right? Same idea. Bring it back around. We don't have control over everything, nor can we change everything to suit what we desire. Sometimes it can be hard to accept just how little we can control on a personal scale, and it can be terrifying trying to do the right thing while knowing there's a distinct possibility that we might fail. Steins Gate is about trying to do the right thing over and over again, but not understanding the consequences of what those choices could bring until it's too late, and then having to undo them through grueling and traumatic process of death and time skipping. That's what makes it anime. Okay, so we can't go back and change the past. It's not possible. At least that's what the government says. Steins Gate asks, would you change the past if you could, despite seeing the unknown consequences of flirting with time? But then again, so does almost every other time travel story. It gets dark, people die, and Okabe lives through pain and suffering an uncounted number of times to no avail. It breaks him, it destroys who he is inside, and he even gives up in the alternative ending. Steins Gate 0 is the process of Okabe slowly being pulled back together and dealing with the grief and loss of Kurisu, while simultaneously keeping the wound of her death fresh by talking to Amadeus, which is an AI based on her memories. Pretty sure Joaquin Phoenix did something like that, I don't know. It's a vision of what it feels like to lose somebody very close to you, to have them pop into your head randomly, to see pictures of them, to grieve for what you had and what you missed before eventually healing enough to move forward. But that's the main theme of Steins Gate. The future isn't behind us, it's ahead, and we can't live in the past to find it. I think we can all agree that we're dealt a pretty random hand in life, right? It's a dice roll on where we're born, who we are, who we have as parents, who's around us. None of us know when we'll die, who we'll meet, when they'll die, or what will even happen a day from now, much less months or years. But it does us no good thinking about what could have been or what should have been. You can't change the past. You can't run away from the consequences of your actions. But what you can change is in the here and now, right? We all make mistakes. We all feel helpless and generally are helpless to stop horrible things from happening. Hindsight is 20/20. Real-time vision is tunneled as f***. Sometimes we cause horrible things because we can't look far enough ahead. That's just reality. Steins Gate is always going to be one of the greats because the turmoil and toil Okabe goes through is relatable to not only our now, but also our past and undeniably our future. We've all experienced those days where you just want to give up and say you can't do it. Or days where you did give up and you lost hope because no matter how hard you tried or how much effort you put into your life, it just decided to f*** you. But Steins Gate not only shows the power of human nature and the need to try again, but the desperation we feel when we make a mistake, or even when we want to better our lives and the lives of those around us. Additionally, it also highlights the insignificance of individual woe on a macro scale. It calls into question the line between selfishness and benevolence. Times can be dark, but people keep trying to better themselves and the lives of those they care about. The idea is that quick fixes are inherently superficial and flawed, and I think that's what hits the hardest in the story for me. We all have a Mayuri or a Kurisu, someone that is worth putting in more effort for than we ever knew we had. And sometimes that someone is someone we've already lost. Maybe you're dealing with the grief of something like that right now. But Steins Gate hits on the human condition that we constantly find ourselves moving forward even if we would rather go back and change the past. There's a lot that I would have liked to not have dealt with, but instead of dwelling on it more than I have to, I do try to look at what I have and what I could have moving forward. What I can do right now, and what I can do tomorrow. I can't change my mistakes, right? But I also wouldn't. And I don't consider myself living without regrets because I have plenty. But living in the mistakes of yesterday makes a brighter future impossible. Your choices affect more than just the immediate area around you. You shouldn't wallow in your mistakes from the past longer than you have to, because one thing that's not really talked about with this butterfly effect is that you are always the butterfly. Actions are actions whether they were taken in the past or taken now. And the wide range of the ripples of your actions are going to have effects that you can't see and may never see. However, that doesn't make them unimportant or insignificant. Focus on what you can do for yourself now and make a better future for tomorrow, and hopefully those ripples will be positive ones, right? That's what Steins Gate reminded me of. If you haven't watched it, I hope you do. If you like this video, I definitely recommend checking out some of our other ones. And before I go, as always, I gotta thank one of our high tier patrons. This week's shout out goes to Man-at-Arms 2032. Thank you so much. And of course, our lucky patron of the week, Your Hog Gravity. Like I said, we have a bunch of projects going on right now, but I do recommend if you are interested in knowing what's going on, either following us on Twitter or making sure that you pay attention to the YouTube posts. But other than that, leave a comment below if you feel like we missed anything. This is a big series. This is something that we are definitely willing to cover again. So if you have something you really want us to talk about, please let me know. And until then, my name is Mike, this is Bonsai Pop, and as always, I'll see you next time. Bye.